So you're doing a hot compost,
Yes.
and what would you normally kick off a hot compost with?
So the materials I use are free. I pick up coffee grounds from local cafes, and I just basically call them up, and if nobody else is picking them up, I'll come and pick them up. Some of them will save them, some of them won't save them for you, depending on how reliable you are as well. The arbory waste, yep, I just call up and I drop it off. It has shredded leaves in it already, so there's green material in there, and it will start heating up when they drop it off. Basically, when you start opening it up, you'll see mold going around, spores, and also just steam, basically.
When you say arbory waste, is that the name of a company? Or
No, so it's
in
just
general?
the arborists.
Ah, yes,
and,
okay.
Yeah, that's just the shred.
But so it comes like this
Yeah,
already?
yeah. I mean, this has had a little bit of my stuff through it. There's some mushroom blocks in there, one piece of cardboard, but this is kind of semi-composting already, but there's quite a lot of carbon in there, so we can add more nitrogen and it will heat up and it will turn over faster. Hot composting, they say generally make it and then you turn it after about 4 days to a week and then every second day, but I don't really do that. I just kind of make it and then forget about it because I don't have the time to be turning all this compost. You want to get, it's all about, okay, so we'll think like a compost for a second and we'll think about what does a compost need? We need oxygen and we need water. And if there's too much oxygen, if there's too much water, you're not going to get enough oxygen because it's choking out the pile. And the water has to be kind of layered through as you build it. If you're just watering it over the top, it's not going to penetrate correctly, it'll just kind of fall out the sides. So the structure is very important of a compost pile. Things like autumn leaves, very flat and like a plate. So if you keep stacking autumn leaves onto a compost pile, you essentially make a shell, and inside it's going to be anaerobic. So you either shred them or you mix them with things like mulch or egg cartons that will hold structure and oxygen inside the pile. Depending on the surface you're doing it on, you want to create the drainage. So if you're doing it on concrete, you put a layer of sticks underneath like a lattice just to raise it above the ground and have the water kind of flow down. And that's really, those are the kind of basic principles of a compost pile. You want oxygen and water, and then you just deal with the ratio. The ratio, I think it depends on the materials, but generally it's about twice as much nitrogen containing materials, twice as much carbon containing materials as nitrogen in volume. So if you've got a bunch of mulch here and then a bunch of food scraps, you put about twice as much mulch for food scraps. And that should get you about the ratio you need. You could be technical about it, but I'm not going to because it's just not worth thinking about. It doesn't really matter. 25 to 1 is supposedly good. Anyway, this is a nice hard soil that we're on. So generally I will start with a layer of carbon material that has a bit of structure, just to kind of get that aeration and drainage stuff. So I'm going to build it here. I do like a kind of like, I don't like to build it directly on one spot. They say 1.5 meters high is the right size for a hot compost, but I kind of spread it out a bit so that I can layer it correctly instead of just putting one thing on top. It's all falling down the sides. Kind of like gutters of shit that not really composting whatever. So it's a nice circular pad to start on, and we'll just go for it. Wasting no time really. Coffee grounds are extremely dense in the nitrogen. It's basically like powdered food. So it's volume, yeah. You want to just be a little bit more conservative than the 1 to 2 of nitrogen to carbon that I was saying.
And the acidity of it is not a concern.
Sorry?
The acidity of coffee grounds?
So acidity, I was actually doing some research, and it's only fresh coffee grounds that really affect the acidity. Once they've been extracted and made coffee out of, the grounds themselves don't really do that.
Is someone neutralized at that point?
Sorry?
Is someone neutralized the pH level?
Yeah, I think it's like just whatever compounds are in there that get pulled out by the water, like caffeine and all sorts of other stuff that do that effect.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend putting coffee directly onto a garden,
Yeah.
but for a compost, it's amazing. And I mean, I do lots of cold composts at home, and I think the rule of thumb is no more than about 20% or 10 or 20% coffee in there. The worms just love it, and and as far as the mix is concerned, I use like a corkscrew kind of thing just to aerate the whole lot, and as long as you mix everything in, it's gold, really gold.
Kind of like gunpowder for the compost. So I kind of just go by feeling, really, these days. I don't think about it too much. Kind of just get a thin layer of this, and then a thicker layer of that, and hopefully it all works out. If it smells, you definitely need to add more carbon, and if there's not enough nitrogen, it will just be not so hot. It's not a big deal. I was reading the Human New Handbook, and they say that there's research to say the ideal temperature for a compost pile is, does anybody know? What is it?
50 to 60?
60?
Yeah, 55 degrees basically. And that is the most effective for decontamination. It's, the hotter is not always better because you actually end up pasteurizing and sterilizing the compost, and you lose the biodiversity, and at the end of it you'll just get like a poorer organic ecology in there, and the plants won't be as healthy either.
What sort of tips would you have to actually help increase temperature? Because my hot compost plot at the moment is it's not as hot as I think it should be, and it's taken a while for it to actually heat up. So is there more nitrogen or carbon inputs that I would need to put in it, or time? Just wait longer.
You're finding it doesn't smell?
Not necessarily, no. I think it's
what kind of materials are you using?
mostly leaves, coffee grinds in there, food waste, and it doesn't smell. I smell a little bit of
carbon
the
material.
coffee's pretty potent for the smell, but more of the food. I can smell a little bit of it, so perhaps there's a little bit too much nitrogen, but overall it smells not that bad.
You're just using leaves, are you?
No, sawdust also. I've got I got some mulch in there as well.
Yeah.
I've got small little twigs on the bottom layers as well.
Yeah.
But I just find that after it's been about a week and a half, and it hasn't really hit temperature yet. It's about 35, 40 degrees in the center.
Alright, I would say the sawdust is also quite fine and dense. It doesn't retain a lot of structure and oxygen in the pile.
Yep.
So you've got to be careful using things like sawdust, really fine materials where there's not going to be much penetration through the pile with the oxygen. And the leaves as well, you shred them?
Not necessarily, no.
Yeah, and even if you do shred them, they still have the same effect of just plating up, and it just gets too compacted. So there's not enough airflow through the pile. That's what I would say.
I've noticed as well, because I've turned it once and they're getting a bit clunky. So would my biggest concern at the moment be that there's not enough aeration going through because of structure, which is limiting the temperature from rising?
Yeah, so it's also the particle size inside the pile. Like this it's quite chunky, this mulch. So almost the chunkier the better, until you're going to like big sticks, where it just won't break down. And it's kind of annoying because you're trying to turn the pile and it's like banging on the fork and you can't get a good scoop or whatever. We also need a hose. I forgot the hose. You get more nutritional mineral still in there, because if it sits out in the rain for about 6 months or 8 months, it's just going to leach. But I see the carbon as a sort of sponge. So it kind of binds the nutrients into the soil that way. So it's never going to be deficient, but maybe you might get a richer hot compost if you can keep it out of the rain. Cold compost, I think they just take a bit longer, really. Usually the cold compost is in a bin, so it's covered. You do have to manage the moisture content a little bit like that, just because it will dry out. So give it a sprinkle every now and then. But I think,
But you wouldn't say what you get after hot compost is a lot better for the soil than the cold compost. Because I've heard David Holmgren saying what you get out of a hot compost is just really gold compared to any other composting technique. I don't know if it's because of the process or...
I'm trying to think why. But,
is there more life because of the temperature? And I don't know.
Yeah, it could be.
Some ways, my
It's also
understanding
got to
of it.
consider that cold compost doesn't actually kill the pathogens like
Yeah.
the way hot compost does. So you can draw what conclusions out of that you will, but that's probably one advantage that many people have with hot compost over cold. But I've had like Adrian, I've got cold compost, and those have worked fine for me. It's just that now I'm actually taking your approach, and I realize I've already got a storage bin for my cold. So when I start my hot, my cold's ready to go in.
Exactly.
So yeah, so I kind of get best of both.
Yeah. mean,
I find they've got
like
different-
In your handbook again, sorry. Even if you, like, at the end of the resting period, the 12 months or 2 years even, all of those pathogens will be out because of the biological activity in there. The natural progression, I mean, the pathogens feed on organisms like us, and if there's nothing like us around, they're going to die. So, but also, I forgot. Any questions? What was someone was saying?
What
Something?
pathogens are we talking about anyway? Unless you're kind of, put human feces or animal feces in.
Well, maybe like
Like a broad term, like a, I like
Well, there'll be diseases. In memory, powdery mildew, for example, things like that.
okay. So kind of,
So you're wanting to avoid spreading
so
diseases.
fungus. So now we're talking garden induced kind of garden fungus basically. So mildew.
Could be.
I understand it was like not just pathogens, but say like seeds and things. So like having
Yeah.
something like a hot compost that's been sterilized potentially, so like if you're using.
Pasteurized.
Yeah.
You
So
won't
it's
get
like you're not
weeds
going to get
coming out.
weeds growing up. You can use it as
Yeah.
an effective weed
So
blocker.
I think that's what they mean normally because it does go to 55, 60 and it's a temperature of pasteurization, like sterilization. Sterilization kills everything. Pasteurization can kill some of the things.
Another thing that could be contributing is the fungal versus bacterial dominated soil, where in a cold compost it's kind of still going, and you're not really going to get a clear distinction between the two, where it's probably mainly bacteria for a very long time. But the hot compost, where it's just going to cook and then it's basically done, and then the fungus will start moving in. Yeah, and then the fungus will colonize, and that's really what you want in your soil, because they develop mycorrhizal relationships with the plants and transport them water and oxygen and other minerals and stuff. Greatly increases the root zone effectiveness and the surface area around the root zone.
What do you think of adding materials such as what you may have like in a home garage, like your blood and bone, potash,
Yeah,
things
so-
like
Blood and bone is basically pure nitrogen, just like the coffee. They do provide beneficial nutrients and minerals that you can't get anywhere else. Something like sea salt, you could even just put a bit of sea salt in the hot compost as you make it. Get a boost at the other end for the plants, kind of infused and really stored inside of the carbon structures. But I think the most amazing thing about hot compost is that it's using materials that you don't have to buy. So you might be even just wasting your energy buying in materials for hot compost, because there's so much material readily available. And I think the incredible thing about when they drop off the arbory waste is that it already starts composting itself. Like if you could imagine an Armageddon situation where there's terrible cyclones and whatever, and all the trees are being ripped up and trapped in ditches and stuff, it's going to just do its own thing already. The biology is taking over. Humans, it's really a hands-off kind of approach. We kind of get in the way more than we help sometimes. So yeah, I try to just let it do its own thing.
for those who might be watching this video, what are the blocks that Eka and Christine are holding?
Oyster mushrooms. Count
That's
as a
mushroom blocks. So that's actually supplemented sawdust with something like soy hulls or a little bit of a grain waste product. But it's like 80-90% sawdust, and then it's been inoculated with mushrooms. These ones are gourmet mushrooms, like oyster mushrooms, shiitake.
And where would you source such things?
Sorry?
Where would you source these?
Well, this was just a chance connection that I made because of my own passion, growing mushrooms and stuff like that. At the farmer's market, there was someone and I got talking to him, and he actually produces so much commercially, he doesn't have the room to do a second flush on the blocks. And he always produces extra in case some of them don't work or whatever. So he puts out maybe 50 to 100 blocks every few days outside of his warehouse in Laverton. And he let me know about that, and been picking them up.
That's nice. So you get a fair bit of fruit off them in their second flush before you compost them as well.
Exactly right, yeah. You just leave them outside basically, let them get rained on.
Oh yeah, and they've already had spores.
Do a little bit more.
Yeah, they've already done
You
one.
literally do nothing except wash them.
Yeah, exactly right. It's amazing. And the pearl oysters taste like 2-minute noodles. A lot of
Selling them.
flavor there.
Other easy to compost
Now,
things would be
I'm not sure what the carbon nitrogen ratio inside the blocks are, whether it's more carbon or more nitrogen. I would say it's about even. It's just a guess really. So it's more of a structural element. You're not trying to balance it out so much. You kind of, if I was thinking from the beginning, I would do like every third layer, one mulch, one coffee, one mushroom, and then just go like that. And added benefit, they're still alive and breathing, so you might get gourmet mushrooms coming out of your pile in your garden. Worry so much, it's the shiny ink. So things on like cardboard boxes and magazines, some fruit boxes, if it's waxed as well, it won't break down very well, so probably petroleum wax as well.
pizza boxes.
Yeah, shiny ink, I don't use. Newspapers, I would, but I don't have the time to shred them, basically. Yeah, thinking about something you said that.
Yeah. What did you say?
Pizza boxes.
Pizza boxes.
Pizza boxes, yeah, go for pizza boxes.
Yeah.
We have an in-house compost bin that everything starts off in, and the kids know if they blow their nose with a tissue, it just goes straight into that, because that breaks down super fast.
Any paper or boxes or anything that's been stained with oil, you can't recycle, so you might as well compost it. Yeah. And like, if a pile gets too tall, peaked, I kind of just like flatten it a bit, and that allows me to just get a nice platform to get there.
On the note of what to put or not to put in the compost, has anyone tried putting all the eco-plastic and eco stuff? They don't break down. So far, yeah, it's not supposed to, because it's actually for commercial composting. Yeah. So, what do people do? There's a couple things broke down, but I'm still waiting for a plastic cup to break down.
Assuming
There's those green bags that are made of cornstarch.
Yeah.
They do break
I
down
think they do break out. There are a couple things that just
in the hot compost. Yeah.
Yeah, it might be
They
a
don't do
temperature
cold
thing.
compost.
I've had these green bags, the biodegradable bags, actually break down just for sitting on my lawn.
The sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, photo degradation.
Well, I was also testing it on these as well until I noticed the green ones actually work. So at least I know those ones work. But the other ones, I can't really see them. They're not as great.
So good.
It's great. It's great.
I've got like probably 2 cubic meters of like a long plasticky grass to be removed from my front yard. Just sitting probably for the anaerobic in my front yard. I've got a pile of wood chips next to it.
What we're going to do is also
Should I like try and shred because like some of the grass is quite long, like it shouldn't have any metal in it. Yeah, it was like these big plastics.
yeah, it's a bit cycle. This is
Yeah, quite fibrous. So we like just chainsawed the base pretty much.
it's like a
Like, should I run a chainsaw through it a few times and just like
You could do that.
shorten them and
Yeah.
then just layer them up?
Do an experiment and just see how it works.
'Cause, Now that size guide, is that just that's my understanding is that is it a minimum requirement to achieve like the surface area to volume ratio for
Yes, for containing the heat and then allowing it to escalate. It's basically critical mass for the
doesn't matter if
compost
you
pile.
make one.
The biggest one, I'm not sure. maybe 3 or 4 cubic meters before the inside can, if it's the right structure even, it will just be too far away from the oxygen.
Okay.
There is a bit of diffusion happening, but
What if you buried like some perforated pipe through it to
yeah,
get internal airflow?
people do that. They drill holes in PVC and then have it down the centre or across. Just cut a mainline oxygen channel. They do that in cold compost piles as well, in bins and stuff. You've got a hot compost system. Sometimes do that just to accelerate it a little bit.
Can you put weed seeds in that and you will kill it?
Sorry?
Can you put weeds with the seeds in it?
In a hot compost, I think it's okay.
Okay.
Some people like to make weed tea, where you'll submerge it for up to 3 months or a few weeks at least.
That depends on how much you don't mind the smell.
Yes, that's horrendous.
Yeah.
So bad.
But the temperature in a hot compost should be enough to kill the seeds.
Yeah, I reckon. Goes about 55.
Probably enough. Because we've run out.
Yeah. I reckon that'll be the last one. Yeah, those leaves, I kind of just, like, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to put them in the pile. Maybe you could just see what I'm talking about. It's like, and then you put stuff on top, and it's just nothing going through there. So you have to shred them, and you have to combine them with other materials.
But looks good though, as it is.
Yeah, just a little garnish.
It'll do wonders for the Instagram. That's all it's for. One thing that because at work we try to, minimise our footprint as much as we can. But I'm not under any illusions. It's an office. But at least if there's paper that needs to be shredded, I can, compost that or give it to the chooks to nest in or something. So how long would you expect this to take to break down?
Like a light sprinkle.
Sorry, Raph. So this pile that we have here now, so there's probably roughly a cubic metre there.
I reckon.
So how long would you expect that to take to break down?
Break down. Well, the more you turn it, the faster it'll break down because you're maintaining a high oxygen environment. Although studies show that once you turn it, the oxygen decreases to the previous levels within about 30 minutes or something. So, but it does give it a little boost. And
So if we leave it just to sit there and let nature take its course?
just that one pile by itself, you could probably break into it and start using it 3 or 4 months. Yeah, but once you open it, it's probably going to start up a little bit more. So at least, probably like 9 months to a year. If you're just going to build a pile and leave it and then want to use it, maybe about 9 months to a year. But if you're turning it, it's probably as little as 2 or 3 months.
Turning it every
second day after 4 or 5 days of establishing.
second
For about
day.
2 weeks.
Right.
You turn it for a couple of weeks. Well, that's what they say. I don't even do that. So I go by the temperature.
So you wouldn't measure it with you have
I
a
don't
big-
even measure the
no,
temperature.
just put your hand in.
Yeah. Just like stick a fork in and
steam,
open it
yeah.
up and see if it's steaming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we gonna cover it?
And if it stinks. No.
No.
Do you have any comments on people that create hot compost piles in, say, like a structured pallets to kind of keep it contained, do you see pros and cons with that?
Organization in the garden. Yeah. If you have to designate space very carefully.
Does that limit airflow? Will that limit certain things?
Well, the
that you want
pallets they have quite large open sections on them, so I'm not worried about airflow. It's just you're limited to how much compost you can make, or how many piles you can have going at one time. I have a pile like this, I just did, and another pile like this, and another pile like, it's like I just don't have the space for that. So
Grandman has like a continuous pile, probably like 10 meters long, and he just puts one of the stuff on one end, and he picks stuff out of it a year later at the other end. It's just a crawling big worm.
yeah, I like that.
Along.
Are there any
no real downsides to actually putting them in structured things like that? Yeah. Cool.
Are there practical considerations that this family should consider, given that there is a forager that might want to investigate such things?
It's his decision, really. Can't control him. Yeah, you can put a fence around it. If you don't want them going to the pile, if there's human waste, you don't want them getting through it. So you've got to be careful about that sort of stuff. Especially, you put it somewhere else, nobody's going to touch. The kids are not going to play around. But
Yeah, typically speaking, I wouldn't expect a suburban context to be concerned with human manure terribly much, though.
yeah, not often. But sometimes. You never know.